Hello there, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm really excited to be here with you. I've noticed that my intro is becoming a little like, I don't know, it sounds a little game showy somehow, like, hello and welcome to the Showing Up to Your Life. So, anyway, that's not intentional. I'm working on it, and I think what I need to do is I need to pre-record some sort of intro so that everybody can, learn, kind of notice it or recognize it or whatever. I got to grow up with this a little bit, and I will. And this actually kind of ties into what I want to say today. But before I go into that, first of all, I want to just reach out to everyone. I know that over in the Northeast, where I am originally from and lived all my life until a couple of years ago, most of my life anyway, they were hit with a whole bunch of snow. And so for all of you friends out there in the Northeast, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, all of y'all out there, as well as Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all of you people over in the northeast end of the United States. I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm holding you in my heart as I picture your kids having a blast, sledding and making snowmen and asking for hot chocolate and stuff. But also, I want you to know that I feel you as you're shoveling and as you're digging yourself out of this whole thing. And I just hope everybody's being safe and healthy and you're all okay. We're actually getting a little more snow out here in Denver too. We've had a very snowy week, like the last 5 days. We've had 4 days of snow or something like that. So I feel your pain, and I want you to know that I'm there with you. Okay, and so and if you're in some part of the world, pause for a moment and think about the people who are having it a really difficult time right now. It's not easy, digging out under like a few feet of snow, and this is a practice of mindfulness in and of itself, right? To pause for a moment and consider what other people are going through, because so many times, and this is going to segue into what I'm talking about today, so trust me, it's not wasted. So many times we might we might kind of get wrapped up in our own stuff, right? Like, okay, finances are difficult, or maybe we're having some sort of argument with our spouse or significant other, partner or friend, or, perhaps work is a little difficult. Perhaps we're, just ready not to be in quarantine anymore. Any of these things could be true, and they're all valid, right? Like, this does not, your experiences with your difficulties are valid, and they are important, and it's important to recognize that you're having a difficult time, right? But sometimes when you can, or not sometimes, but all the time, when you can also pause for a moment and reflect on how other people are suffering too, and of course, I'm talking about the Northeast, where they just had basically a snowstorm. I mean, they're used to the snowstorms. It's not, sure, there might be some people who die from it, and it might be, tragic for certain people, but by and large, people are going to get through it. It's a little inconvenience. We can also stop and think about people who deal with devastating floods around the world, and typhoons in the Far East and the, Southeast Asia, people dealing with hunger and pollution and all kinds of issues that are happening out there. When we can pause for a moment and we can consider what other people are going through, it doesn't diminish our own problems. And that's really a misconception a lot of times. Sometimes people think like, okay, well, if I just think about how horrible somebody else has it, then, my stuff isn't that bad. But that's not true, right? And that's not very helpful for you either, right? You want to recognize your struggles for what they are, because it's all relative, right? Like, just because you have what we call first world problems, it doesn't mean that they're not valid problems to you. But what connecting to other people through suffering does is it at least makes you feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. It doesn't mean that my problems are less just because somebody else has worse problems, but what it means is that I am not alone in my suffering. And if I can feel that connection, that not being alone, in the world kind of thing, well, now I can, I don't feel the same level of fear that I might have felt, right? And I don't feel the same level of hopelessness that I might have felt, right? I can feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this, so therefore I can kind of hold that connection to others, and that, again, that will relieve a little bit of the fear that's involved, which means that, the problem with fear, and this is really what we're going to get into today, is that, when we're experiencing a difficult situation, right, and then we add fear into that difficult situation, well, then what that does is that creates stress, right? And when our bodies are in stress, as I talk about here a lot, we're in survival mode. And therefore, the solutions that we're likely to come up with, to the difficult struggles that we might be experiencing, well, those solutions are not going to be as creative. They're not going to be as innovative. They're not going to be as open and aware as they would otherwise be if we didn't have that fear, right? So in other words, in the same way that I talk about a lot of other things, and we're going to get into that in a second, when we feel the fear associated with a difficult situation and the stress that ensues from that, well, what that does is just, in very simple terms, it makes the bad situation worse. Right? Whereas if we can manage the situations that we're in without the fear and without the ensuing stress that arises from the fear, well, then what we can do is we can make the bad situation not necessarily better and not worse, but we can at least tackle it for what it really is. We're not adding on another layer of difficulty to it. Okay, and I hope that makes sense to you. If you have any difficulty sort of understanding that concept, I invite you to reach out to me and let me know, because I can maybe explain it in a different way, because it's really important, because that's what we wind up doing. And now we're going to get into what I wanted to talk about today. I was just on a call with a client of mine a little earlier, and this client of mine is a really one of just an amazing person. Been working with this person for I think it's over a year now, which is amazing. I have such gratitude for the clients who I get to serve, and for seeing their growth and helping them through these kind of the difficulties that we have. Because the thing is, and this is something else I talk about a lot, is that it's not like, a lot of times when I say, okay, we're going to practice, I'm going to suggest to you do this practice every day, right? So that you can, maintain your state of equilibrium and homeostasis, not get stressed, not get, anxious and all turned around with things. We're going to practice this to achieve this goal, right? But the thing is, and a lot of times we think like, okay, now I'm starting practice, right? Like, okay, I was never practicing before, now I'm going to practice. But that's not accurate, right? The accurate way to say that is that we're going to practice something new now, because we have been practicing something all this time, right? Maybe not intentionally, and maybe we could even say unwittingly we've been practicing, but we have been practicing. Every time you react in a certain way to a certain, stimulus, right? That is a practice. And every time you do something like that, for instance, if every time, you get an email from your supervisor at work, and you have a certain reaction to that, well, that is the practice, right? So now every time you see that person's name on your email, you're automatically going to feel that way, because the reason why it's automatic is because you've been practicing it, right? And that's where this work that I talk about here, the work of mindfulness practices and heartfulness practices, which is the compassion and empathy and everything that I talk so much about because I just love it. But the practices that we're doing, what we're doing is we're creating new habits. What I was explaining to my client this morning is, he's an avid runner, right? And so if let's say every day of your life, right, you run 2 miles, right, and it's just your thing, right, every day you run 2 miles and do it in the evening, it feels great, it's a great time for you to clear your mind, you listen to your music, you get in shape, it's all beautiful, right? Let's say one day you decide, okay, I'm going to run 3 miles today instead of 2. Right? Now, you've been running 2 miles for so long that your body knows what 2 miles feels like. So therefore, when you reach 2 miles and you've decided now that you're going to go that extra mile, your body is going to feel, wait a second, this is when I'm supposed to stop, right? And this is when what's going on here, right? And that's what's going to make that last mile much harder. We would think that, okay, if I've run 2 miles for so long, I have such conditioning that adding another mile shouldn't be a big deal, but it's going to be a big deal to your body. It's not a big deal to your mind, it's a big deal to your body. Right? So that's the way in which habits kind of, manifest themselves, right? And that's what we try to, address and kind of take advantage of in a way with these mindfulness practices, right? Because when you do this practice over and over and over and over again, right? Whether it's the practice of self-compassion, compassion for others, whether it's the simple pause that we're going to build on today, whether it's meditation every morning, whatever it is, when you do that over and over and over and over again for about a month, it becomes a practice. So for instance, let's say you do a meditation every morning, right? For say 5 minutes every morning, before you get dressed, before you get ready for work, whatever, you do a 5-minute meditation, right? You do that every day for a month, right? Well, then on the 33rd day that you wake up, right, your body's going to be like, okay, it's time to meditate, right? And if you don't do the meditation, then something's going to feel off. Right? And if we're paying attention to it, we'll know that the reason why it feels off is because our body is so accustomed to meditating that that's what it wants to do, right? So a habit is something that your body knows how to do better than your mind knows how to do it, right? And so that's the idea, right? Now, getting back to the original point here, right, is that when we, we talk a lot in mindfulness practices about just simple, non-judging awareness. And as I talked about earlier this week, when we can see our experiences in life as just sort of a phenomenon that arises, it exists for a time, and then it passes, right? When we can look at things like that, okay, and that could be anything from a physical thing that's happening in the world, or it could be our emotions, or it could be, a traffic jam. It could be anything, right? If we, and literally, I mean that every single experience that we have, we can look at as something that arises. It exists for a time, and then it just goes, right? It moves on, right? It passes, right? Now, again, how much time that is different, right? Depending on what we're dealing with, right? So if you break a bone, right, there's 8 to 10 to 12 weeks of time before that bone heals, right? Whereas if you're just in a difficult emotion that you're feeling, that could be as little as 90 seconds, right? So that it's not a fixed kind of thing, right? But if we can look at everything that we're experiencing as just this sort of phenomenon that is arising, is existing for a moment, and then it is passing, right? Now we can start to, when we look at things that way, what the objective here is to release the judgment of these experiences that we have, right? So we don't say, okay, this is a good experience versus this one over here is a bad experience, right? Because the minute we do that, okay, something really important happens. And I know I've talked about this before, so please bear with me. If you've seen this, if you've seen me talk about it or heard me talk about this before, I'm going to invite you to listen again, because this is so intrinsic and so basic to the concepts of everything that I'm talking about, and is really the way in which you can live a stress-free life and not operate from that place of fear and hyper-arousal, which again makes your decisions and your solutions less creative, less innovative, less compassionate, less compassion for yourself and others, less constructive, less purposeful, less all the things that you want, right? Because what happens is, right, is that the moment that we say, okay, this is a good experience and this is a bad experience, right? What happens there is that we engage in one or the other, right? If it's a good experience, we engage in clinging to that good experience, right? And if it's what we say, this is a bad experience, then what we wind up doing is we avert that, we push away from that experience, right? Because we don't want it, right? It's a bad experience, right? Now, of course, it doesn't see, and this is where this stuff gets very slippery and tricky and sneaky on us, right? Because it doesn't seem like a bad thing, right? So like if you have a toothache, right, like that would be considered a bad experience, right? Like, and most of us would agree that a toothache is anything but a good experience, right? But here's the thing: when if we can instead view it as something that is just happening, it's neither good nor bad, it's uncomfortable, but it's neither good nor bad. It's just an experience that has arisen. It's going to exist for a time, that time being the time between now and when I can get to the dentist to get whatever is wrong with it repaired, whatever that means, and then it will pass. Right? And so when if we don't look at it that way, and instead we look at it as a bad experience, right? What we're doing is we don't want that bad experience. So we're going to push it away again, right? And when we're doing that, what we're doing is we're engaging in the emotion of fear. Okay, so when you're feeling like, okay, this is a bad experience, I'm afraid of it, I don't want this thing, because we're going to be afraid of things that we judge as bad, right? And so therefore the toothache is still going to be the toothache, right? But now you're sitting here thinking about how bad it is to have a toothache, and how horrible this is, and then you start thinking about, and this is the way the mind works, is as soon as you kind of enter into that stress of your body, right, remember the cycle of the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations of your body, right? You have this thought that it's a bad thing to have a toothache, right? And now you have an emotion about that bad thing that's a toothache. Now that emotion is going to start with something along the lines of fear, or some version of fear, right? And now you can have a physical sensation other than the toothache, obviously, right? There's going to be some sort of manifestation of this emotion of fear, which then is going to send a signal back to your brain, which is going to make your brain come up with another thought that engages in that same fear, because now your brain feels like there's something really, really wrong. Not just a toothache, right? It's more than just a toothache now, right? The toothache has become this really big thing. And now you might have the thought of, what does it mean that I have a toothache? Does this mean that I'm not a good person because I didn't take care of my teeth? Now I feel the emotion of shame. And now that shame has another, sensation, and now I have another thought, like now I'm angry because my parents didn't train me well enough to floss and brush my teeth. You see how that happens, and that just becomes like a snowball, right? And every time it comes around, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and now you have much more problems than just a simple toothache. Right? And that's how this stuff works, right? So again, but that bigger problem comes from judging the toothache as something that is bad. Now, many of you out there are probably thinking, well, then there can't be anything wrong with judging something as good, right? Like if I get if I wake up in the morning and I feel great, like that's not if I judge that as a good thing, that can't be bad, right, Art? Well, in a sense, you're right, but the problem is that once we judge something as good, the same way we judge something as bad, when we judge something as good, we cling to it, right? Now, again, you might think, the instinct is to say, well, there's nothing wrong with clinging to something that's good, right? Because it's good. It's there's nothing unhealthy, there's nothing dangerous, there's nothing, so why not cling to it? Well, here's why not. Because in the clinging, right, what we've done now is we've engaged in fear again, but now it's not the fear of the thing itself, it's not the fear of feeling good, but it's the fear of what happens when the feeling good goes away, right? And now I'm worried about that, and now I have this again, it's the same process, right? So now it's like, I guess, if you want me to go through the process again, so we have this thought, like I feel really good, and I have this emotion of again, if I judge it as feeling good, that emotion is still going to be fear, right? So I'm going to be, gosh, I wish I could feel this way forever, and now I feel fear that I'm not going to feel this way forever, and now that sensation in my body is again going to be something that's inspired by fear. It's going to be a little different from the toothache fear, but it's still going to be a fear. And now I think, oh my gosh, what do I have to do to make this happen? And now, of course, now I'm off the rails, right? Because, what am I going to do what can I do to make this feeling last longer, right? And now, when an email comes in or the phone rings or something, no, you're taking away this moment, And again, that all comes from the fear and the stress that's caused by the fear, right? So I don't know if that last example made a whole lot of sense to you, but I hope you get what I'm going for here. So the idea then, right, and what mindfulness invites us to do, right, is to not judge the experiences, right? So this good feeling is just something that has arisen. It's going to exist for a time, and then it's going to pass, right? And if I can accept that it is something that is arising and it's going to exist for a time, and then it's going to go, then that acceptance is what's going to keep me from feeling like, oh no, I got to do something to make it happen, right? And then I won't feel that. And then so ultimately what happens is I feel the happiness in a stronger way. And I feel that goodness in a stronger way, more fully. So I enjoy it more, right? And likewise, if I feel like, okay, I have this negative, fear about this toothache that I have, right, beyond just the pain, the physical pain, because again, the physical pain is simply an experience, right? It's an unpleasant experience perhaps, but it is just an experience. It arises, it hurts right now, right, and it's going to hurt for a time, but then it will pass. Right? As a great little exercise for that is that when you wake up in the morning, notice that you don't have a toothache, right? Notice that you don't have a backache, a footache, a bellyache, whatever it is, right? Unless, of course, you do. But then if you practice every morning, waking up or at any time during the day, you notice that I don't have these maladies, throughout whatever they are, right? You can list whatever it is for you. For me, it would be like a toothache, a headache, a stomach ache, a foot ache, or backache, all that, right? Like I'm not feeling any of that. So then if I say that to myself every day, and I really notice it every day, and I notice that I don't have this, backache every single day, and then one morning I wake up and my back does hurt, it's like, well, I have this reference of all these other days where my back didn't hurt. So now I can reassure myself that it is a very impermanent sensation that's happening, and it's going to go away soon enough, right? So I don't have to engage in the fear about it. I can just, stretch a little. I can maybe take a pain reliever. I can maybe lie down on my back a little bit to try to get it to feel a little bit better so I can kind of focus on my day because the pain might be distracting, right? But I don't have to get into this like, oh, why me? Because that's where we make it, again, something that's bigger than just a backache, right? And so in every situation, and here's where a little practice is coming up for all of you folks. I hope people are still listening at this point. But, in every situation that you find yourself engaged in stress and the emotions that inspire, that cause the stress, right, which is fear, in every situation, there is either one of two things is happening. Either you're clinging to something that you should let go, right? Like let go of the fact that it's a good feeling. Just let it go. Just let it be, right? Or you're not accepting something like a toothache, like the fact that this toothache is here right now, and it's just going to be a matter of time before it can be relieved, but accepting that for what it is, right? And again, it doesn't mean that the tooth hurts less because you accept it, but what it means is that you're not adding another dimension of emotional stress on top of the toothache that's already, bringing you down, right? So the idea then is in every situation, right, that we're feeling stress and challenged emotionally, right, any emotional trigger that you have, there's almost always, in fact, probably 100% of the time, there's either something that you're clinging to that you could let go, or there's something that you are grasping to, or there's something that you're pushing away in aversion that you should be accepting. Okay, now here's a great practice for you, and this is what my client and friend this morning talked about, today, is that you can train yourself to constantly be asking, right? What is it? Is there something right now, rather, let me rephrase it. Is there something right now that I should be letting go of? Or is there something that I should be accepting? Right? And if you train yourself, because again, now you've been practicing your whole life just automatically clinging and averting, right? You've been practicing that all your life, right? And so there's no intention, there's no non-judging awareness of what is happening because you haven't trained yourself to do it, right? And unwittingly, by always, kind of indulging in the clinging or the aversion, you have trained yourself to do that. Right? So now we can, in about 30 days, you can train yourself to ask the question, is there something I need to accept in this situation, or is there something I need to let go of in this situation, right? And if we train ourselves to do that, then what happens is every situation that arises, you're going to have this little subtle, little tiny voice in your head saying, hey, is this something you should be accepting or letting go of? Right? So in order to train that for yourself, it's super simple, okay? What I'd invite you to do is 4 times every day. Okay, so whatever times you're going to do is up to you, but I'm just going to throw out a little example. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, at 12 o'clock noon, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 6 o'clock in the evening, right? When the clock strikes those 4 times, okay, what you do is you just pause for a few moments. Take a couple of breaths and just really center yourself with a couple of mindful breaths, just really paying attention to the breath coming in and out of your body, right? And now simply ask yourself, right now, is there anything happening that I should accept or that I could accept or something that I could let go of, right? And the idea here is to develop, again, the habit of doing this, because if you're asking yourself those 2 questions all the time, then chances are you will be able to see, or not chances are, it's absolute that you will be able to see after you've practiced for a while, you will be able to see that, yes, I'm clinging to this thing and that's what's causing me discomfort. And if I just let go of it, the discomfort goes with it. Okay, same thing with the acceptance on the other side of the equation. All right, so again, 4 times a day, space them out, but here's the thing, make them the same time every day, because that's how your body is going to develop a habit. Your body's going to recognize after a certain period of time, your body's going to recognize the pattern, right? That it's this time, this time, this time, this time. Again, what times those are, that's up to you. I just recommend spreading them out throughout the day as much as you can, right? But if you do that at the same time every day, here's how a habit gets formed, right? There's the cue, there's the process, there's the reward. So the cue is, it's 9 o'clock, I'm asking myself these questions. The process is asking myself these questions. The reward is, I'm working on myself, I'm working to relieve my stress, and I know this is helping me. And then after a few weeks, you're going to find yourself less stressed. And now that's when we're cooking with gas, because now that's a real big reward. And the more that happens, the more solid and deep these habits are going to be. And then before you know it, you are feeling a lot less stress in your body. All right, so if you'd like more information about this or you have any questions, please just reach out and let me know. Okay, you can drop a comment below, you can send a direct message, you can send me an email, you can go over to my website, artburnscoaching.com, book a free call with me. It's any way you want to do it. I invite you to get in touch with me and let's chat about this, all right? Because I'm here to help you. And speaking of which, do those YouTube things, do the podcast things, the subscribe, the comment, the share, and like on the YouTube side, and on the podcast side, just rate and review, because this will help to elevate me in the algorithms, which will help me to get in front of more people to deliver these messages that could help people. And that, again, is something that you can connect with. Just like, the snow and the troubles that people are having around the world, you can say, okay, if I do this every time, if I like every video that I watch of Art's and I make a comment and I rate and review the podcast, well, what happens is that I am going to connect to somebody out there who needs the help, right? And without even thinking about that, that's something that's going to happen in the background of your mind. And it's going to be very, very good for you. Okay, so please indulge me and do that for yourself. All right. So thanks very much for listening. I wish you well. Have a great weekend. Again, hope you all dig yourselves out okay, and hope you don't hurt your back by shoveling too much. And if anybody needs to talk, you know where to find me. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. Take care.